Hello, this is Dr. P. Mark Taylor, and I'm going to share my screen with you, and we are going to look at some good examples or bad examples. Well, two examples that will highlight what the difference between a theoretical framework and a conceptual framework. Now, this first example is from Brian Mills. He just presented this not too long ago, and it stood out to me because I would say that he has a very clear theoretical framework and a very clear conceptual framework. So he lists Maslow's first, but I'm going to start with the second thing he presents, which is small learning communities. Because when he was looking into things about the transition, how to make things better for ninth graders first year of high school, and it's got a freshman academy, and you want to see what the impact is, and you want to study some aspects of that. You find this literature, and you see that small learning communities is one of the things that comes up the most. And so in that small learning communities stuff, literature, I should say, you have lots of references that talk about the need, this, that, and the other, but then it dwindles, narrows down gradually into the implementation of freshman transition programs, and then he narrowed it down within that field to freshman academies. So all that literature and the ideas that he integrated through there in his lit review actually represent a conceptual framework. All those little factoids from the 20, 30, 50, 100, whatever number of references you have, I had 100, form a conceptual framework. And so if you're familiar at all with freshman academies, there are certain features, which includes being closed off from the other grades, and those things will all come up. Those are the pieces of your conceptual framework. But here comes the bookend. We know you're going to look at those elements. Is it a closed community? Do they feel a sense of connection with their fellow ninth graders because they're in this smaller community and all those? But the theoretical framework that Brian has chosen is Maslow's motivational theory. And in that respect, it's not the framework that tells you which aspect to study. All of that research gave you the conceptual framework, and those pieces in the conceptual framework are what he studied. But he started off and ended looking at it through the Maslow's motivational theory, and that's a lens to think about what motivates kids and how to think about the elements implemented in a small school community like the freshman academy. So, yeah, being closed off is one of those things that's worked. But why has it worked? Well, if you look through the lens of Maslow's hierarchy there, safety needs is a big thing. So as he does his initial lit review, he uses that theoretical lens to say, you know, breaking off into a community that's smaller and more tight-knit is more likely to serve the safety needs and the love and belongingness needs. The teachers focusing in on individual students and teaming up and showing care in a more focused way is going to serve their esteem needs. And so theoretical framework is sort of the how you look at the elements that you found in your lit review, how you look at the elements of the conceptual framework. And then when he did his results, when he collected data and he analyzed it, he's using the structure of his conceptual framework, the things he's got from the lit review. But then the next question was, and how do these results, how can we view these results through the lens of Maslow's motivational theory? Well, the fact that our students are still worried so much about social that they can't focus on school, and, are we doing enough to give them that sense of longing and belonging, love and belongingness? And then you look at the results and the specific things they said to talk about what's there and what's not there in terms of love and belongingness. And that way we understand better the results that we got, because we didn't just look at each of the elements of the small school community, but we looked at them in terms of what the students need to be motivated, the safety, the esteem, the self-actualization, etc. So theoretical framework in this case was Maslow, and the small learning communities, that's a general theory. When you get down to the specifics, the nurturing environment, the decentralized breaking in the school into smaller units, those things form the conceptual framework. So the conceptual framework are the elements that you are studying, and the theoretical framework is how you look at them and how you interpret the results. If that's not clear as mud, let me show you a different dissertation and show you what should have happened. And in this case, let's see if I can successfully show you this one. And I'm hoping that you see it because it's sort of odd. Let's take a look and see if we do. This one is my dissertation, and as a matter of fact, just to be sure, I'm going to do a couple of screenshots. Oh, I'll do a split screen. Sorry about that. Okay, so I'm gonna show you, I think you can see this now. This is my chapter 2 outline. I did a study of collegiality among high school mathematics teachers within the departments at large schools in Missouri and in the context of math reform. And if you look at the collegiality in context, factors, aids, and impediments, the things that made that the lit review highlighted as things that impact the way teachers interact and the level of collegiality. I named the idea of academic context, which is what contextual elements are they cause teachers to learn. And it can be elements from the state, No Child Left Behind, Common Core standards, anything that triggers the need and the perceived need in the teacher's eyes to learn and get better at something. Support, exactly what you think it is. Structure can be the physical structure, like in some math departments, all of the math classes were right next to each other, so the teachers could easily talk between classes before and after school. And some of them had a few teachers that were around the corner or upstairs, and that made it hard. It's also just the way the departments are structured, etc. Beliefs and attitudes of the individual teachers. Affiliation, are they part of larger communities like the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics? Demographics, how long have they been teaching there? Are they 34-year teachers? Are they first-year teachers? And do they have masters? When did they study? What did they study? And then interaction among all those issues. So that's my conceptual framework that I pieced together. There wasn't really a name for it before I studied it. And but these are the ideas that I pulled out of my 100 references, and that became the conceptual framework. Now, I studied teachers. I interviewed them. I observed them in meetings and just how they interacted during normal school days. I observed, and I looked at minutes from meetings and whatnot. So I had 3 or 4 sources of data, which you would always want, of course. But here's what I didn't do. I didn't use a theoretical framework. And I really missed out on this. And the thing that could have made this really good research a lot better even is the communities of practice theoretical framework. And a community of practice is basically, are you a community? And if you're a community, then you have insiders or experts and outsiders who are peripheral participants. You have norms. You have practices that are specific to your little community. And I could have used that lens to explain what I was seeing and to explain each of the elements of the results. Now, the most interesting thing to me out of this study was the pockets of collegiality. Some Algebra 1 teachers identified some of the other Algebra 1 teachers as peers. and they did not see that Algebra 2 teachers were their peers. They didn't interact with them on a collegial level. Well, how can you explain that? Well, I looked at each of the elements in the conceptual framework, but I should have also looked at it through the theoretical framework of communities of practice to talk about the differences in these little subgroups. I call them collegial pockets. And what are the beliefs in this subgroup that are different from the beliefs and norms in this other subgroup, or this other collegial pocket? And why does that keep a wall between them? And then what are some, for future research that would have brought out more of a what catalysts can we intervene with to get those groups to build shared norms so that they see each other more as colleagues than they did, and trust them and ask them questions and interact more on a professional level. So this one, it's my research, it's my dissertation. It had a strong conceptual framework, but it really needed a theoretical framework on front and back end to really understand it in a deeper way. So those are my two examples. There's plenty of videos out there on YouTube about conceptual and theoretical frameworks, but I think these two examples, especially the Mills example because he had both, kind of highlight the differences. One's a big theoretical way of looking at what you studied. One's the elements that you have to study. The theoretical is big, conceptual framework is smaller technical components. And so it's good to have both. Which one will you choose first? In my experience, most people choose or work through the lit review and build a conceptual framework, like my factors, aids, and impediments in collegial interaction. But then think about what is a lens that's useful to use to think about those things and help us understand deeper. And that's communities of practice actually was suggested to me by Fran Arbaugh, but it was pretty much after the fact, so it didn't end up in my dissertation. But it is now the way that I understand what happened, and when I talk to people about my dissertation, I use that to explain it. So I'm hoping you all will use a theoretical framework in addition to the conceptual framework that came from the lit review, so that you will also have a deeper understanding and do a slightly better job than I did on the dissertation. All right, well, I think I will leave you to your post 4 and the go through the process of brainstorming. You probably have the beginnings or maybe a well-developed conceptual framework because you've been studying your topic for a while. Most of you have topics that you've been studying for several semesters, and you kind of have a conceptual framework ready or really close to ready that's out of all the reading that you've done. So you can talk about that and you can make your list of elements like I did, like you see there. And then the more difficult part usually is to come up with ideas for the broad look. What is the theoretical lens through which I can look at these elements at the beginning and at the end of the research, and to help me interpret the deeper meaning of what comes out of the study. All right, so you're going to brainstorm. You probably won't get anywhere near knowing exactly what you're going to do for theoretical and conceptual frameworks for a while. It's something that you work through in the process, and it's not linear. I can't give you exact instructions because you'll go back and forth until you settle. So that's why you just have to lay some things out in this DP4 and just keep talking it through and sharing ideas with others and helping them think through, asking questions, making suggestions on the ways to look at their study until it starts to really just make sense and you get into a groove of, yeah, this is a good way to look at it. So start your process. Do not wait until you think you have it figured out to start posting on DP4. You've got to just start blurting it out and straighten it out later. All right. Have a good day, and I will see you online.